17th of September 2021, tarehe 17 mwezi wa 9 mwaka 2021. Natumai kwamba uko salama, umeamka vizuri and you are ready to tackle your day. It's Friday, Sheria Wiki on Friday the 17th of September 2021. Ni Sheria Wiki tarehe 17 mwezi wa 9 mwaka 2021. I hope you're doing well. Karibu tena. We've been a great week. It's been a great week together. As usual Friday inakujanga na mambo ya Sheria Wiki. Daktari Yakuro Court bado yuko pale South Sudan. Anatengeneza serikali ya Sudan. Ni South Sudan ama ni Sudan? Anyway, he's busy making a government in South Sudan, so well, he'll be back again next week. Lakini hope you guys are doing well. Kama kawaida, request on journey, please like. When you like, we get to know that you're watching us, and that like, please share. When you share, you give someone else an opportunity to watch the broadcast. This is a tackle and it begins now. Wacha tuone mbele za Mungu tuombe, alafu tukirudi basi nakuja kuwapa salamu zenu, na pia niwaambie wageni tayari mwaona pale kidogo, lakini nikirudi nakuja kuwa introduce officially. Mighty Father, we come before you this morning. We worship you, glorify your name. Thank you for another opportunity to be alive this morning. We thank you for the week that has been. Even as we end it, we pray that you're going to be with us and we come back with gratitude. Even as we start this conversation, may it edify the fabric of this country. For we pray, trusting and believing. Amen and amen. Haya. Mwana ongona ameamka hapa mapema, na leo tuko na Professor Prof Kisiangani mwenyewe. Alisema ni kungori, kunoma. Professor Edward Kisiangani yuko na sisi leo, na pia tuko na ARNOLD Maliba. He's been missing in action. Nasikia pia anatengeneza serikali Somalia.
Kazi kidogo hapa.
Kazi kidogo ni gani? Unajua mtu akisikia ni kupambana tu. Unajua mtu na bilioni kwa akaunti, nasikia ni kungangana. Haya, karibu sana Prof. Haya, acha nisalimie wangona kidogo alafu nirudi kwenu. Mungu alita continue. Anasema morning team tackle tuning in from Convent United Kingdom. Could be part of this morning Sheria Wiki edition. Asante sana ndugu yangu, good to see you. Emmanuel Serem, good morning bro. Good morning to you my brother and welcome back. Abi Drizzy from Eldoret tuned in. Asante sana Emmanuel Serem. Amamusha Leonard Serem, Andre Moses Nyiganet Kebene na Isaac Serem. Karibuni sana wangwana. Leonard Serem, I think ni mtu wa diaspora, ataingia sasa hivi, hiyo akosangi kabisa. Gamaliel baba yao. So good morning GB watching from Karen. Asante sana tu wa Karen. Kipkoech Willy, a very good morning 035. Good morning to you. Kagifate, good morning to you from Thika. Asante sana Kagifate, good to see you. Moses Waweru Irungu, good morning Jerabi Talk, waiting for you from you guys. Asante Karoki wa Masi, live from County 047 Model Serem. A country cannot overtax its citizens' prosperity. Anasema a country that tries to tax itself to prosperity is like sitting in a bucket and lifting yourself by the handle. Okay. Sawa, haya ni mambo ya Kenya. Ushuru inaendelea kupanda. Kina Prof atatuambia ni aje. Nimeona Prof leo ni kama amekuja na ogada. Makifi. Kama uchumi inaanza inaendelea kuuma. Aduda Hari Jakendu, as I'm listening to you at a zero volume. Asante sana Kipet Kipto live from Machakos County, Shoki Mau. Good to see you. Ana nani mwingine hapa? Felix Mwangale, Sharon Richards anasema good morning to you. Felix Mwangale, na wasabe wote amjambo. Sijambo sana, tujambo sana kaka. Natumai kwamba uko salama pia. I hope you're doing well. Acha niangalie kuna kitu kidogo kamepoteza mambo yenu hapa kidogo, lakini acha nione. Haya. Sawa. Naona nani mwingine hapa? Kibet Kipto live from Machakos County, Shokimo. Asante sana Sharon Richards, good morning. Felix Mwangale na wasabi wa tamjambo atujambo. Kama offside anasema bado na watch nikiwa Nyeri, sijafanikiwa kukuja Kanairo. Kuja Kanairo, maliza shule kuja Nairobi. Aliza shule kuja Nairobi. Kibet Edwin Childomo anasema tuned in from Westlands. Fuel prices, fuel. Timon Cheria live anasema iko ndani. Anakuwa wapi ndugu yangu? Timon Cheria anasema live from Eldoret. Asante sana Joseph Nganga, niko ndani kabisa. Martin Goni, morning my brother. Someone in GB Kikuyu tuko locked. Asante sana ndugu yangu. Ambassador mwenyewe Alfred Saja anasema morning from Perth. Asante sana ndugu yangu, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and also thank you for being part of Diaspora edition yesterday. Martin Goni anasema tuna umizwa. Poleni bana, in the serikali yetu 5-10. Steven Sarofit, morning brother, waiting to debate. Asante sana ndugu yangu Sarofit. Abraham Sejen, ambassador, anasema ugali ni 3K, we are adding value. Nasikia Nandi County kuna ugali ya 3,000. Haya. Bernard Lee 028 morning tackle. Frederick Shombe Okango, good to see you my brother. Anasema watching siasa, karibu sana ndugu yangu. Titus Komora anasema morning boss, loud and clear from Kitale. Dan Faso Kari anasema Gardens at River. Asante sana Marule Nyaigoti, watching you live from JKIA. Haya, karibu sana. When you join in, please like. When you like, we get to know that you're watching us, and that will please share. When you share, you give someone else an opportunity to watch the broadcast. This is tackle and it begins now. Boy child anasema falling from Malaba. Asante sana. Prof, good morning.
Good morning.
Kunaendaje?
Ngori.
Noma. Umefikaje hapa?
Kwa mguu.
Asikia wakona sema tununua avocado teleze mpaka town.
Baada unajua kwa mguu tu kutembea. Hatuna pesa za mafuta.
Acha vako wewe hujatembea.
Baada ni hustler.
Umetembea kweli? Mtu amenyonga taa hivyo, shati ni safi. Ama umebadilisha hapa?
Hapa tu.
Umegeuzia hapa. Otherwise, how have you been?
I'm okay.
It's been a long time.
Yes.
Umepotelea sana.
Yes.
Hebu salimia wangwana.
Wacha niwasalimie kidogo. Sisi mimi niko hapa. Tumekuja kuhustle na Gerard Bitoko. Nzuri sana. Tunataka kupiga siasa kidogo. Alafu tuzungumze maneno ya maana sana kuhusu hii nchi yetu. Mambo ya muhimu kabisa tuweze kujadiliana katika gunzo, tutapata suluhisho juu ya matatizo yote ambayo yanatukumba hapa Kenya.
Haya, tutamaliza kweli. Tangu uhuru kila mtu amejaribu, mazungumzo yamekuwa yakifanyika.
Lakini tunaweza kupata mwelekeo kidogo.
Tangangana tu.
Lakini tunajua kwamba Wakenya watashirikiana na waweze kuona suluhisho gani wanaweza kupata kwa matatizo yao haya makubwa sana ambayo yanawakumba. Makubwa
zaidi. Haya, good morning to you my brother Arnold.
Morning, how are you?
Salama sana. How are you doing well?
I'm doing fine.
Umepotea sana?
Happy to be here. Ni hali ya kutafuta because mlimaliza pesa yote mkafika zingine. So we have to leave.
Ekonoma.
Yeah. But then have you told your viewers na watu wetu huko chini kwa siku hizo uko na pay bill?
Waniwekea kitu. Tafadhali. Niko na pay bill hapa. Unaweza tuwekea kitu kidogo.
Nimeshangaa ni miezi 3 ama 2.
Miezi umeenda karibu 4 bwana.
Yeah, nimerudi nimepata uko na pay bill hapa hivi. Ni vizuri tu tuambie kwa kuwa wanatuma sadaka ya upendo.
Watupaka kitu. Yeah. Lakini sasa unajua kabla hata hujafika kwa watu wenye wako hapa, si tuanze na wewe Arnold. Wacheko kwa kitu.
Ni sijui kama umeona confirmed.
Sinema.
Yeah, so nimefurahi kurudi hapa. Hii hapa unajua inakuaga nyumbani. Tunakuja tunaongea, tunapanga kazi kila Friday. Yeah.
Where have you been? What have you been up to?
Kama kawaida tu niko na employer mwenye ni mfani kidogo, lakini nimekuwa Somalia kila place kuanzia Mogadishu, Galkayo, Puntland. Mogadishu ni pahali ya kujificha kwenda kuandika fanya paperwork, lakini ground ni Kismayo, Galkayo. Hizo places zote unazunguka Baidoa. Niliambiwa Baidoa ndio paradise. Yeah.
What have you been up to? Unafanya nini kule?
I'm actually trying, like unajua maisha yangu yote nimefanya kazi na vijana largely. Okay. Yeah, so I'm trying to help the government of Somalia to just sort out their youth issues. So we've been working on the policy, trying to work on the programs and ensure that with their partners they're able to raise resources, they're able to serve the young people of Somalia effectively. Incidentally, Somalia is the second youngest country in the world after Uganda. You know, Uganda by median age is 14. If you were to throw a stone in Uganda, the likelihood of hitting a 14-year-old is very high. Then Somalia comes in. Somalia is largely a country of young people. So hata ukiambiwa mtu wao ni director wa NIS, unakutana na mtu wako in his 30s. Director general sijui nini, but then at the apex utakutana na wazee. Yeah, so some lessons hapa na pale kama kawaida, then we are sharing experience, also trying to see how
hakuna family planning sana.
Makosa hiyo side nyingine ya family planning ni kuwa
sasa ndio wapate watoi hapa, hata mtu hana mtoto na anasema anafanya family planning. Unaona,
ni watu wachache sana by the way. They are only 15 million na Somalia is the size of Kenya, as in Kenya inaenda ndani ya Somalia landmass once na nusu ingine, and they are only 15 million. Sisi we are doing 52 million already. So population intensity hapa iko haya, ile side nyingine ni wako na plot lakini hakuna watu. So hata ukisema population na kuzaa family planning iko haya, they still have got so much tracts of land. So every time I walk around I make jokes and tell them, nikiangalia hiyo coastline yao ninaona tu pesa. And then they are like Kenyans na kuona shamba.
So connect couple.
Roti maguta.
Because that's the longest coastline in Africa, about 1500 kilometers.
Yes.
So, longest. Yeah.
So how far are you there with all things?
I'm hoping that I complete my work in January and come back to do my politics properly. Yeah.
Politics where?
Politics, of course, unajua nataka kukuwa mbunge. Unajua mara mingi nimekuwa ni
unajua zingine nasikia uko Nairobi, zingine nasikia umehamia huko.
No, unajua nilijaribu Western once nikaachia kina Kisiangani kwa sababu siasa ya Western. Well, I was born and brought up in the city largely and then I went up country for high school. Unajua kitambo sijui uligurowia wapi. Hii town sisi wenye tuligurowia hapa.
Wewe uligurowia huko.
Ukifika class 8 mzazi anakupeleka nyumbani uende ujifunze Kilwea. Ilikuwa almost mandatory, so that's how I ended up doing high school there.
Okay.
Then of course I came back for college here and I've been working around here. So I did as you know, of course I did politics in Nairobi for quite a while. National Youth Council. That is why literally everybody else, people have refused to associate me with any other thing I do. They always think I am a youth person and of course for a good reason. So the National Youth Council, TNA, then I ran here for the Senate when I was just turning 20 in 2013. Of course I was the youngest person and I was number 1 from behind.
Ulikuwa kunoma.
Haya, unajua hii country kura huwa zitoshi. Ile mtu mwenye kura zake zilitosha.
Wangegeuza tu hivi ungekuwa nambari 1.
They just looked at the wrong side.
Haya, dunia inakuja pa matumaini. Wacha niangalie wangwana kidogo nilikuja kwa profesa tuanze kazi. Titus Komasa, morning boss Lord and clear from Kitale. Asante sana ndugu yangu kutoka Kitale. Emmanuel Nyaigoti watching you live from JKIA. Boycha nakuona. Dalfas Okari Great World Gardens at River as I receive my shout outs. Silas Kiai, good morning. Following most MPs are very silent yet people elected them to be represented. Citizens are crying over increase in fuel prices. Kimutai Mark, good morning. Gerald Bitok watching from Voi. Larry Kimonori. Hey, good morning watching from Kericho. Bet Gideon, good morning Gerald Bitok. I really love your show buddy. Locked from Kericho. Thank you so much my brother. Areba Samba Moyo mwenyewe. Mheshimiwa nasikia anazunguka pale grounds juu anataka nini? Unaomba nini pale? Anasema watching live from Kashuba, Kitutu Masaba constituency.
Unajua hiyo raia ilienda the great school in Western, the only one.
Which
Areba.
Yeah.
Alienda wapi?
Kakamega High School.
Wacha
Na hizo vitu anajiita wakili na hizo vitu zingine. The most important thing is that he
went to Kakamega High School.
The African Government School Kakamega.
Friends Kamuzinga ama ni gani?
Wacha na hiyo, how do you become friends? We lawyers love peace. So wacha na vitu friends. All of us are friends.
Mkwano.
what about Chesamis?
Those were goons. I'm sorry dog.
Mocha malaba tunanunua mafuta Uganda. Ala Aisha said present don't let the past relationship in life ruin your future happiness. Cards reminder of what have been out no you're going through. Keep kwa chwili. Sauti ya Arnold aliwacha kwa nyumba. Hai imerudi. Larry Kiptor Ruth as I'm watching live from Eldoret. Say hi to Arnold Maliba. Jeffrey Kibet Koskei. Good morning to my brother and some guest list checked. Asante sana tick asante sana Jeffrey. Abed Gideon ongeza volume kwa mic ya Arnold. Ezra Mayo and I'm watching live from Doha Qatar. Tuko pamoja. Cheriot Cleophas, good morning to class. Peter Masharia tune in from Nanyu. Kid David Kitutu, good morning from Kapsabet. Aya prof nikunoma nikungori kende
hapa wana
akia nani umesikia bei ya mafuta?
Imeenda bwana, imeruka ngori.
Yeah.
Iko juu huko bwana. Inapaa.
Hapo uko kwenu ni ngapi? Uko kwenu ni ngapi?
Wetu.
Mnaweza
kunegotiate lakini mnaanzia 134. Lakini mnaweza kunegotiate wakakukatia 50 cents.
Unaweza magain kidogo.
Ile ya kupepa kwa
so what's going on? I mean,
mitungi.
what's going on? How can we build an economy like this? What do you think is the problem with this country?
You see, my brother Gerard, there are so many jokers in this country. This is what you see when William Ruto talks about the bottom-up economic policy. They say he's joking. But those who tell him he's joking are the really jokers. This country has a problem. And the problem is, you know, government wants to execute certain programs. It has projects. It has an obligation. But then the same government doesn't have money. So it taxes everybody and overtaxes. Now, if you look at the tax base, many people can't afford to pay taxes because their businesses have been criminalized or nobody's even promoting small businesses. So at the base is poverty. At the base, the base of our social pyramid is a lot of poverty. People who depend on the few at the top who have some little money. So you have to keep taxing. And then you even tax people who don't have that money.
Who have nothing.
Who have nothing. So what we have been saying is, government is not going to raise enough revenue with the current economic model. The economic model that assumes that the people at the top have enough money which will finance our taxation system. No. So the solution is forget about parliament. The solution is that we must change the economic model, so that at the base we have more people doing work, more people getting into jobs, getting into businesses. Let us not criminalize businesses at the bottom. Then when they increase the number of people, we increase the number of people who can pay taxes, Gerard, then at individual level, our personal taxes will come down. Then, but we shall still have a huge revenue base which we can use to build our country. So nobody understands that. They think you can raise taxes, keep raising taxes, but you are raising taxes with the same people. Many people can't pay for this. Yeah. So this is the problem. And unless we think we have a different approach to our economic problems in this country, we are going to reach a point where it is no longer manageable. So the jokes that are there, and I've heard them especially from people who are probably opponents of the new thinking from William Ruto. They will tell you that, look, we don't want this kind of thing. It is not very good. We are okay with the trickle down. This trickle down, we have 47 million people. Depending on just about 2 million people to raise taxes. So why don't we rethink and say, how can we empower these 47 million at the base who are really poor, whose businesses we have criminalized to keep crashing using the police, and then we tell them, pay some taxes. How much money would we raise, even if these taxes came down to everybody, but at least we empower people at the base to raise taxes? How much money would we raise? Would we be talking about this value added tax, 16%, 8%? Would we talk about that, Gerard? We would not. We would have a lot of money to finance our business. So I think the problem is we must rethink our economic strategy, stop talking politics over everything, and when people come up with suggestions that can improve our country, you only look at them because you hate them, and because you think that you are entitled to getting power. You can do everything else. We have this neo bottom-up thinkers who don't want to agree they are neo bottom-up people, but they keep on talking about watu wa chini. I saw Musalia talking about watu wa chini, wanaenda kuumia, lakini ukimwambia wewe Musalia, si wewe ni mtu wetu kama wewe si kama sisi tu watu wa bottom-up, hawezi kukubali. Ukiangalia Raila Odinga anaongea juu ya watu wa chini, lakini ukimwambia, so what is the difference between you and William Ruto? Why quarreling William Ruto? Why don't we reform our economy based on this bottom-up approach, empowering the base, and then making sure that this base has enough resources from which we can tax? If we don't do that, Gerard, I'm not sure that we can make it. This country needs a new economic approach, a new economic thinking that now focuses on the base.
So that is what is going to reduce the fuel prices?
Yes, it will. It will, because, exorbitant fuel prices is based on the assumption that everybody is affected by fuel. Once you do fuel, you increase the fuel prices to affect every part of the economy. So you tax everybody. Everybody's salary, small earnings will be taxed. But then we have a huge population, as I said, about 46 million people who cannot raise money, who cannot have a decent living. So these are the people that we need to empower, because if you now reduce taxes, but you increase the number of people paying taxes, you increase the amount of money you need, but people will not feel the pinch. But if you are taxing a small group, then you have to keep increasing, and even there are so many defaulters. You will see even at the end of the financial year, many people are going to default. Even the big companies will default, and the KRA will be on their neck. So why we are feeling these taxes is the economy is shrinking. This economy is shrinking to levels that are unacceptable, and we must now start thinking, how can we expand this economic base so that it can raise enough revenue that would deal with our problems without
taxing the money,
without overtaxing the mwananchi. We want people to pay taxes, but reasonable taxes. If you broaden the base, you can still make more money. But then you have everybody paying taxes. I think very many people don't pay taxes. They are not in the tax bracket. Some of the the businesses, like if you drive up to Kibera, you see fellows selling mandazi, others selling potatoes, but if you ask them, do you ever pay tax? They don't pay tax. They are not part of the tax bracket because government has criminalized their business. So, but suppose we recognize their business, promote that business, then ask them to pay something little. If they pay one more shilling to the tax kitty, it means that the fuel will come down by one more shilling and then come to 133. And if we do the same in your place in Wasenigishu, and then we do the same with people in Kiambu at Soko Mjinga, we recognize their businesses, finally you will end up with people paying for fuel maybe 116, 110, but we still raise more than what we are raising now. That is the point that I'm making. Okay. So bottom up is the way out of this. Unless we rethink the base, we are not going to sort out the fuel problem in Kenya. And once we do, like the increases in fuel prices, we already now know that everybody is going to be affected. It's not about parliament. It's about government not having enough money to finance its business.
Okay. All right. Arnold, what do you think is going on?
I think we made this bed and we have to lie on it. And like Professor says, even though I know he's forgotten one thing, that literally all of us are actually paying taxes through other means. And the government has actually initiated a bottom-up approach at getting taxes. Because somehow they have ensured that even if they cannot get you into the mainstream bracket, that somehow you pay for things like this. Everything you get. But you pay for that tax before you even consume. That every time you get anything you are trying to work on, government ensures that they take their money home. Probably to just put this in perspective, that since 1992, the formal sector stopped being the highest absorber to people, rather creating jobs, and the informal sector overtook. So the challenge we've had with the informal sector is that it's just as informal as we talk about it. It's gray. You don't get data about it. You cannot organize around that. So how does government work out? It goes a bottom-up way by ensuring that they throw fuel. The way they've done. All of you are going to feel it because the matatu is going to... That is bottom-up. They fish from the bottom so that they can actually take care of the top. The challenge with that has been over time that they really do not care about the rest of us. He spoke about 2 million people who are paying money. KRA says they have got about 4.5 million Kenyans in within their
tax rate.
Their tax, I don't know, there's a register or whatever book they have. And you have to remember that we've got about 16 to 17 million people who are already working at a different level. We have refused to organize the bottom, but somehow we punish it with coming up with very funny taxes the way we are doing it. That if things do not work, because they've already overtaxed the formal people within the formal sector, they overtaxed them, we have failed to widen the tax bracket, so we deepen. And every time we actually get around there is that then you come up with these things. Because if you look at fuel landing in Mombasa at 40 bob, but then when you are going to put it in your car, you are doing it at 130 plus. Everything else from 140 going up are different layers of taxes. So it's just calling it differently, that you brought in this bottle. So anything that you're actually paying for, you are paying for probably a third of this. The rest of it is actually to take care of government staff and everything around that. It is policies done the wrong way over time. A government that does not have a feeling. But then they assume that just because KRA has failed to organize its books, that the rest of us are not paying taxes, and therefore they can actually keep on pushing the taxes the way they do around. And they are so shameless, by the way. When the president came to power, I think power was about... petrol was about 66 shillings. You've seen that photo go around repeatedly going around. But the president...
61 shillings.
61 shillings. And he has got this appetite that for him, whatever Kenyatta wants, Kenyatta gets. He doesn't care at what cost. Probably it's time we organize ourselves. And that is what I think for me. I have really not taken time to address people who have got a problem with the bottom-up approach. Because it's not like they are stupid. They know. in this country, people are so selfish, and sometimes they're very basic in a way that if you are not part and parcel of it, then you become against it.
Yeah.
People who are well learned, they know that bottom up is not even is not really a new phrase. It's been around planning, design, engineering for a very long time. It's not a new phrase. That when you're talking about bottom up, you are talking about starting with the specifics as you get to the generalities.
Okay.
And as opposed to the other way around, where you begin with the bigger idea and then now go into specifics.
Okay.
Here, the bottom-up approach is basic, that you are looking at specifics. We are starting with the people, the individuals here, before we talk about a community. That we know that if you're going to talk about a community, there is no such thing as a community without individuals.
Yeah.
So can we talk about the individual aspects and components that make the bigger whole, as opposed to talking about a whole without numbers? Because, but then, you know, people play around with the data a lot.
Yeah.
And you have heard this so many times, that if you're going to torture data long enough, it will confess. So it's easy to talk about a GDP that is doing well. It's easy to talk about big figures. But does that translate to better lives to the people on the ground? When we took on the new constitution, it is a, you know, the new constitution is a culmination of a struggle of very many years. Actually, normally I talk about 50, because immediately after independence, we realized that independence alone was not enough.
Okay.
So people started to fight for the second liberation immediately after independence, because we realized that independence alone was not enough. We had got people who had come in and they became neo-colonialists immediately. They started oppressing us. And that's why the people like Jaramogi started rioting there and then, asking questions, asking for equality, saying not yet Uhuru. That's why we've got, and it has been 57 years, and it's not yet Uhuru completely, because the normal mwananchi, that
The common man
the
is not
common
feeling
man,
the freedom.
whether it's Wanjiku, whether it's Mora, whether it's Nafula, they really, as in, they really have not had this country. So of course we fought for the second liberation, and now we have got, which was so much about governance. So now we have got a very progressive constitution, very progressive anywhere else in the world you will see. But then we have got what I call in my own terms, the third liberation. And the third, what I also consider the final liberation, in my opinion, that is that is about Article 43, the socioeconomic components, because it's not enough to have a free country. It's also not enough to have a country with good and progressive constitution and good, robust governance structures. Is that has to translate into the quality of life. And that's when we are coming into the Article 43 rights. Around that, it doesn't matter if I have got very progressive governance structures. If that does not translate into money, into education for my children, if I do not have access to water, social security, that if I'm retiring, then I get worried. For so many people, retirement in this country has always been a death sentence. Because immediately you retire, then you know, I either look up to my children, and if you are not very lucky to have probably children who will take care of you, then you start dying slowly. You go to squalor, yet you have contributed to national building and everything else. So all the Article 43 rights around there. So even as we speak around that, all the challenges we have today are around the policies we have had, and it's about political will.
But I think also there is this question that why would people feel uncomfortable paying 134 shillings for fuel for a liter of super? Why are they uncomfortable? The question is it possible for us to pay 133 or 34 and still keep some money? Why is it so hard to pay that tax and still keep some money in our pockets? Because the point is that money, what the earning capacity of our people is so low. So once you raise taxes, you take away the little they would probably have to buy water if they are living in Nairobi, or pay rent. So there isn't enough money in the pocket of the people such that they can still pay comfortably the taxes the government is raising and still keep some money to live a comfortable life. So that's not happening. So in that case, therefore, we are asking, the reason why that is happening, why people are complaining about these taxes that we are seeing over fuel, is because they remain with their earning capacity. The money they keep in their houses has reduced. So what is the solution? The solution is that we must enhance the earning capacity of the people. And that is the base you are addressing. Yes, our people, some businesses have been criminalized. People have lost businesses, and in the current circumstances, the situation has been worsened by COVID. That even the businesses themselves went out of operation. But in the other cases, government has criminalized businesses, and sometimes they don't even promote any business at the base. So the little that people earn, and you have picked on an item like fuel, which really affects everybody. You are taking away even the little they used to earn last month. That if salaries have remained the same as they are, or the earnings have remained the same as they are, Kenyans are now poorer by 7 shillings. Because you have added 7 shillings on pure fuel
by default.
By default, so 7 shillings poorer, and yet they are already struggling. So if you ask that question, then you can ask, what is really wrong? The policies you are talking about, the obligations of Article 43, which you have talked about on the social economic rights, and then of course the fact that the economic model we apply, which does not bring on board everybody and expands the economy at the base, is the reason why we are this kind of thing. So just continuing to raise taxes, if you think the economy is shrinking like this, and then in the next one year again we have fuel going up to 145 or probably 150, where will people get money to pay for that? That causes social instability in our country. So the thinking around how governance can be done, how we can do policies that can help the people of this country, has been reserved for very less people. I think we have very less people in this country who trivialize a serious problem like the one we are facing. And the time has come for us to start thinking collectively, not even individually, that is this situation sustainable or it's leading us to doom? If it's leading us to doom, is it late? Is it late for us to do it? Arnold, if you are the one suggesting a good idea, people have to ask, where do you come from?
Yeah.
They even ask you, Gerard, which political party do you belong to? The business of Kenyans, right now this fuel is not affecting UDA or ODM alone. It's affecting all of us. Yeah. So we must think collectively, even if we have political affiliations. If it is President Uhuru who is coming up with a good idea about how to change the economy, we must listen to him. If it's Raila Odinga doing it, we must listen to him. If it's William Ruto who's saying, look, I have been in government and I think things are not working very well, why don't we try this method and in fact enhance it? Then listen to him. But everything has become politics and nobody wants to think about it. So long as it's coming from Arnold and you don't agree with him, if it's coming from Gerard and you don't agree with him, people are not ready to interrogate these things. We don't have a final solution to the problems of this country. I think these problems of this country cannot be sorted out by one person. So that's why we are making an input into this and thinking that the trickle down has not worked. Bottom up can work. We can even get a hybrid. But look at what happens on the social media. I know that people will abuse you, insult you, just because you are saying something that will interfere with what their political godfather is talking about. And in the end, we lose the conversation.
There are two ways to look at that.
Yes.
Number one, I'll address about the insults.
Yes.
On insults, a number of people who do insult others on social media, it's actually out of projection. Yes. People who are angry out of the same problems we are talking about, and the only way to actually vent is to project on other people, which for me is so much about skepticism. But this is it. Taxation for government has been bottom up, and it has worked to take care of the government's insatiable appetite.
For cash?
Yes. So when it comes to taxation, they work out the bottom up, that if they do not know how to reach out to Mama Mboga out there, what they do is that they just send out a tax onto somebody who sells something they know that Mama Mboga will automatically buy. So they know things that all of us actually use, things around energy. We're talking about petroleum.
Because you can't run away from.
Things that we can't run away from.
But also Arnold, when you look at the ripple effect, because it's not just about fuel. It translates into the cost of unga, the cost of oil, cooking oil, the cost of everything else that you consume every day. So the ripple effect is not only on spending more on fuel, but also spending more on sustenance.
That's what actually I was talking about. That when it comes to getting the money that government has always taken from the people, they have no problem applying the bottom-up approach. Because you know what? They just send it into the masses and they will get money back. The way they've done.
But it causes suffering.
Yes, it's causing suffering.
Yes.
But when it comes now to administering and providing public goods, working for the people, now we get very critical onto issues. Why can't we approach the same? Why can't we use the same approach the way we used to get money? Because we just have to get a few people to sit down in an office, calculate and say, these are the numbers of the people that we have out there. So if we apply this particular tax or increase it by this percentage, we will get this money. They work out that very easily using the bottom-up approach to get money. Until it comes to the level where they now want, they are actually required to serve the people. Gerard, for the last 57 years, this country has grown by leaps and bounds. And I'll tell you this without necessarily being afraid, is that Kenya is not where it is because governments in the past have really worked hard and consciously, deliberately to ensure that we be where we are. It is the people out of their own small ways who are very diligent, industrious, working out. So Kenya is where it is today, out of the people's deliberate and individual effort. We wake up in the morning and we get running. We have been serving government for a very long time. It is time we also had a conversation with government where government can also serve us. Don't get it wrong. The people in this country do understand that government will not do everything for them. That's why they wake up in the morning to go to their farms and work everything else. But they do know that government is an enabler. This government has not been an enabler. This government has been a stumbling block over the years, simply because that even with a constitution that is so much bottom-up in approach, let's look at the constitution. What does the preamble start with? It says, we the people. You talking about the best going up, we the people. Look at Article 1, 2, and 3, all of them talking about the people going up. But when it comes to the management of public affairs, we run away from Article 10. Because this constitution was so much about a participatory structure of governance. When you talk about public participation, it should not be tokenistic. The same way when we plan and work out the economy, how we apply the management of public affairs should be participatory. How many people were consulted on this? None. And by the way, no one really cares how you feel. They know that you'll actually, I know because I've worked for government for a while, I will tell you this, that sometimes they'll just make noise for a week or two and then they cool down. It's time that we had a conversation and moved away from the projection. We have got about 2 million Kenyans on Twitter, about 8 million of them on Facebook. And government knows that we cannot do so much, and they know how to play around with us. They get a few influencers like yourself and Professor, a few guys to actually throw words around here, and you move away from the same issues. In other countries, a huge increase of fuel like this one here would actually cause people to go home. So, of course, there is what we know.
How much fuel is fuel in Somalia, by the way?
Well, I do not want to talk about Somalia because Somalia has got a challenge with inflation, and we cannot equate ourselves to our neighbors. We are Kenyans, and we have got our own situation and our own context. If we look at that, for example, that we work so hard, and that government can spend lavishly, but when it comes to taking care of our issues, then government inaanza kizungu mingi. Oh, this one cannot work it. Because the only reason why we are talking about trickle down.
Hata Kiswahili mingi. Not just Kisungu nyingi. Sometimes hata Kikamba nyingi, Kiluya nyingi.
So, they do that specifically to ensure that then we are not in control of the management of public affairs. Article 10 then becomes an opinion. I've told you before this, that sometimes a few people in government wish. When I was young, in Huruma, I grew up in a church setting, a gospel church. And I'm still young. I'm almost going to 40, so I'll be an old man soon. So when Bishop Arthur Kitonga would read to us, and we were young, so when we got into teenage, we started making fun that we wish our Bible was written in pencil, so that the things we do not like, we can actually erase. So where it says do not, we then you just erase the note so that we do. Sometimes I actually look at people in government and they behave like us when we were teenagers, where the constitution is so much, where there is a note, we do. Where they don't like what the constitution says that they should do, they actually include a note that should not be there. So just allowing people to participate in their own economy, because we are already sustaining this government.
Okay.
And going forward, we really need to have a conversation. But this is the national conversation that some people have been talking about. When we start having that national conversation, they are uncomfortable.
Yeah. And also Prof, kuna mtu alikuwa anauliza jana, kwani ile mafuta yetu ya Turkana ilikuwa ya kujipaka? What happened to our fuel in Turkana? And another question is, are we hungry enough? Like Arnold is saying, it seems like the government knows our temperament and how we are structured, character-wise, that we'll rant for 2 days, then the country will move on. What happened to our fuel in Turkana? And are Kenyans really hungry enough?
You see, this is what Arnold has just talked about. The question of national values and the principles of governance, as stipulated in Article 10, transparency, accountability. The government does not talk anything about Turkana. You know, about 2 years ago, we had the lorries that were transporting our oil from Turkana
we actually saw them
to a county, to Mombasa, to have the oil exported to some place, I think Singapore. Now, you know, if you put a truck on the road from here to Lodwar, even if it is from brand new lorry from General Motors, I think in about 2 months, if it does 2-3 trips, it is off. Who got this tender to have these lorries on the road? I don't see them again, but they have been doing the rounds. I think if the best practices would have been, after the government discovered there are some oil deposits in Turkana, we should have had a national conversation on how to manage. I have been to Nigeria. You know, for a very long time, Nigeria has been producing oil without having a refinery. And they have been taking that oil to the United States and other places. I think Dangote is now building a refinery there. Probably it's now complete. But for many years, Nigeria, the leading producer of oil in Africa, has been having its crude being sold to other countries for processing. And then it buys back that as a finished product. We thought that model was not the right one for Kenya to take. If it had discovered oil, the next thing would be to continue mapping out our oil depots while constructing a refinery. Because if you sell a cup of that crude oil, in that cup you are using to take tea, you are selling tar, you are selling super, you are selling lubricants for the engines.
You're selling diesel.
You are selling diesel. So
bitumen.
Everything is being sold.
Polypropylene for making sacks.
Sacks. Let me tell you, why would you have such a resource and you sell it? The same problem we have in Africa. If you go to Kinshasa's DRC, you find that there are no places to process gold. They still take gold to New York to bring in gold chains, diamonds. Nobody's cutting that in our local capital cities in Africa. Copper is the same in Zambia. The copper wires that Zambia uses are not locally produced, but they are producing the copper ore, which is exported to China and other places, and they bring back the finished products. So we thought that economic model of selling our primary commodities without giving them value chain is not going to be adopted with regard to Turkana. But these guys unilaterally, without asking anybody to participate in the way forward, they decided to sell this, and there was a container, I'm told, waiting at Mombasa. So the several lorries would do trips to fill it before it leaves the port. Look at how expensive it is. Now, nobody even tells the public. Now, since we discovered fuel in Turkana, this is how much we have sold. This is how much has gone into the economy. This is how we are using the oil.
So where is our fuel?
So I don't know. You know, you are asking me. Gerard, mimi si kava. Unaniuliza
at least yuko na melango unaingianga.
It should actually be clear. When we talk about our fuel, did we even own it in the first place?
Yes. Mimi si kava. Uliza preso na watu wake. Hao ndio wanajua mali oil iko. We know.
Unasikia hata fununu, unajua unatembea kwa corridors of power. So unasikia ka fununu
wanapangusa tu na wewe tu nikipita. Unajua nini?
Yeah.
Huyu anauliza where is our fuel? it is even if I'm surprised he's asking, it's a valid question. Because we need to know how our resources are. Now, in a country which announced that it has discovered oil, and now it is crying over very high fuel prices. My thinking was this. We should have kept that oil and build a refinery even at Lamu.
Okay.
And then we start processing our own oil. Even for domestic use, like for countries like Egypt, we don't produce a lot of oil, but have some oil. Their main focus is domestic consumption. So even if they have a refinery, they do it for domestic purposes. But we don't do that. So when you ask, where is our oil? Let me also ask, where is our oil?
Prof,
recharge
I actually just needed to put this into perspective.
Recharge, upate kwa nguvu. Naona sukumia recharge prof hapa.
I just wanted to put that conversation into perspective. Number one, as a country, we have sustained and maintained a refinery for the longest time until we discovered oil. And somehow that refinery became difficult to manage. It became difficult.
Suddenly.
And in this country, I have realized one thing that, especially for the cartels and the people who run the economy at the top, they really are addicts of data. They look at government data, they pour over data, hire people who can actually go through data and plan in advance. We had a refinery that was working so well for years.
Changamwe.
Bringing crude oil from other countries
elsewhere
to process
here.
But when we discover oil, it closes, and then we take our crude oil to Singapore
elsewhere
to process.
So it is the
watu wanahitaji kuchapwa biboko. Wacha nikwambie.
It is actually an old business model by cartels in this country. At one point, 11% of all the land in Nairobi was under industrial use. Today, only 3% of Nairobi's land is under industrial use. What did we do? We became a merchant country and then outsourced all the manufacturing elsewhere so that the same things can actually be brought in here at a profit, because of course the cost of production around here and the land equation in Nairobi has been very difficult, actually an inverted one. So look at it from the bigger way, that why would we have a refinery that runs and functions for decades until we discover oil, and then all of a sudden it's difficult to manage and we close it down. Of course, for obvious reasons. So same thing when you hear about sugar. Sugar goes to Uganda and comes back here under the COMESA and all those difficult tapestry around the interwoven way of how you look at the laws, the international laws around how we trade. So Uganda all of a sudden has got surplus sugar. Yet you look at their data and they also import sugar. But they have got surplus that they then sell to us.
They import sugar, but they have surplus.
It's not Uganda that is actually sending to us. It's
a
few guys around here doing the same thing. We are doing the same thing with oil. We cannot, in the long run, sustain an economy that is actually run by bandits. A few pirates in high places manipulating policy and all government decisions. So that, because people really do not care. Every time they look at us, they look at, we're talking about 52 million people. If I got a shilling from every one of those people for the next 1 year, I have made this number of money, and you move around. So we need to take back the country to the people. We need to have a conversation. And this conversation we're having is a difficult one. That's why in a country that is not used to politics of ideas, politics of ideology, politics that is anchored in issues, we really have got a very lazy nature of looking at politics. So we just want to sloganier and run away. Now, when we have got a serious conversation about the economy, now you look at people you thought initially were educated, sounding like villagers and farmers. All of a sudden, they do not understand basics.
Or they refuse to understand.
They just refuse. Just that all of a sudden, they have refused to understand that. So somehow, and we have had this, all of us know, that it's only a madman who does things the same way repeatedly and expects different results.
Okay.
So if we are complaining that the way our country and the way we manage public affairs in this country has been hurting us, isn't it time we actually thought and worked out differently? All solutions cannot come from Nairobi.
Okay.
It is even the reason why we came up with the devolution, that there are solutions that can actually come from the ground, that ideas can actually come to the ground, that individual efforts, and that every one of us with just a little bit of enablement, with a little bit of being helped out on small things. We know that we don't have to sort everybody else, that we can make this country better, that we cannot make Kenya better if our lives are bitter.
And Arnold, just to reinforce your point, this seems to be the cancer of Kenya, Gerard. You see, you have asked about oil.
Yeah.
When oil was discovered, stakeholders, the Republic was not fully involved on how we can proceed.
Yeah.
The people, the big guys in Nairobi knew all the answers to the oil problems. Now they have kept quiet. The latest story you hear about oil is that Energy Minister Munyes has discontinued some contracts of some companies. First of all, you don't know which contracts they signed.
Which company?
But now you just hear that some contracts have this. You know about those contracts when they are being discontinued. Yeah. But when they are being signed and how much is involved, what commitment Kenya government is supposed to undertake, nobody knows. But it is the same thing that you have seen the other day, just a few days ago. The Minister for Education arrogantly dismissing people who are questioning CPC. Let me tell you something. Even these universities, when you ask them, they got to know about CPC and what it's supposed to do when the minister started making tours at the CPC and started talking about implementation. The initial thinking about CPC, the main stakeholders were not really involved. Government decided it is going to adopt CPC. It had a few people who supported the process, more or less like BBI. And then they decide on a project. If you expose these projects to public discussion, discourses, they will come up, they will refine, they will deal with the weaknesses, and you come out with a better thing. So the way CPCs, you have seen it, it's running into trouble. Is the way the oil thing has gone into trouble. There is too much belief that the people of Kenya know nothing. Government knows all the answers to their problems, and it decides how it does it. When something comes up, it decides the solution, the way out, and in most cases, it gets it wrong.
They know it all.
They know it all. Okay. And so that's why, my brother, Arnold, I support your point that really we need to restructure our governance structures. It is not even important to focus on individuals. We just need to say we must rethink afresh. Are we doing very well? Very many things are going on in this country the public has no knowledge about. And I think you ask the question, are we angry enough? We need to be angry enough that some people have arrogated themselves the responsibility of thinking for us when we have not even authorized them. These people who think that they can wake up in this morning and tell you, today we have BBI. And then they decide. And then they say, this is what the people of Kenya, this is what the people of Kenya want. And then tomorrow they tell you now, I think you will be comfortable. Today we need to raise the fuel by 7 shillings. Then the Bunge itself, members of parliament, start crying
on Twitter,
crocodile tears about the increasing prices in fuel when they even passed the law which authorized government to do that. And even parliament is a victim. These members of parliament know very well that if they don't do that, they don't approve bills that raise the prices of fuel. Maybe somebody will tell them, now you don't get your allowances. So we don't have money to pay your allowances. So they are accomplices in crime. They have colluded with government to destroy our country. Okay. So we need a new thinking, and the new thinking that, Gerard, we need in this country is not a thinking about pushing one person into one corner or another one, but bring everybody on the table and saying, look, we have a problem. My initial thinking is this about this problem. I have a suggestion about this possible solution. What do you think, Gerard? Then you give an opinion. But when you have these guys who have a silo mentality, they have locked themselves into some cocoon where they think they are supposed to give solutions to our problems. It is trickle down. Somebody standing there on a 10th floor, and all of you are on the ground, and he's telling you now, from today, all of you run left. Then all of you put lie on the barabara.
And you are supposed to ask, how extreme left should we go? Not why.
This is what's happening.
How left.
Yes, how left.
These commands from above, they have affected the way we do business in this country. They have affected our institutions. You have seen even sometimes police tell you they're getting orders from above. We want the orders to come from below.
By the way,
moving on.
Prof, one of those things that we really need to remind people, those who are practicing Christians will tell you that if you want to know a Christian, you look at their bank account.
Yes.
Allah?
I will actually change that and actually say this.
Are you a Christian?
Yes, I'm practicing.
We will look at your
account.
So,
You need to start.
You then will want to know that if you want to see a free man, look at his economic status.
Okay.
If you have no choice, you have no voice,
Then you are not free.
on how you just manage that personal economy you have, you're not a free man. So we can go out and make all the noise on Twitter. We can be free to insult a few leaders here and there. We can actually go home. And you realize we are not truly free. I still do not understand how the curfew has stayed this long. We have been socialized into accepting that.
normalizing it.
It's so normalized and ingrained into us. So we turned the COVID pandemic, into a public order issue as opposed to what it really was. It was a health challenge.
A health challenge, yeah.
But we have turned it around into a security and public order. And of course, for political management of the masses. So all of a sudden, we still have got in here, there are people whose economies depended on the night. We have got a whole 24-hour economy policy in this country. It was part and parcel of us going towards Vision 2030. That has been stifled, no one was asked. But somehow, the measures that had been put in to ensure that COVID does not hit us hard were lifted, and no matching compensation was done. Instead, what we have had over time is that the prices have gone up. You know, even when we allowed matatus to start carrying full capacity, the matatus told us that they had lost so much, they will not bring the prices down.
Yeah.
Now, on top of that, so remember that generally in the last 1 year, the price has gone up, the matatus have not revised it downwards, and now we are shooting fuel prices, meaning that we will go much higher, and nothing has changed. The minimum wage has not changed. Even as a country, we do not even have a productivity center. So sometimes you can just work out there, and then I will do some guesswork and say, this is the hours that Prof put in, these are the hours that you put in, and this is what they are worth.
And you know, majority of the people at that lower level, before just you continue.
Yeah.
Unajua kwamba there are people who use one panty for 5 years.
As in,
1 year, how long is it supposed to be used?
If it was green, it becomes white.
How long?
No, he can't afford anything else. And the others, they can only put off their panties when it's at night. You will never look at them because they cannot afford money. And the socks has so many holes.
You fear to faint. You can faint in town.
You know,
They have to
this is the
prepare
point. You know, even the socks are torn. So that is the freedom you are talking about. When you see such a
being a
person,
free man.
he is really in trouble.
You're not free.
So, by the way,
Some
Prof,
have no panties.
so when I'm talking about a free man and being able,
Or the bryce torn.
being able to Prof,
No, it's true. That's the reality.
so that my train of thought is not lost.
This guy is spoiling your thoughts.
No, I'm not.
He's not spoiling my thought.
He's intoxicating your
run
thoughts.
into a different direction. Like,
No, but
All I'm saying is intoxicating you.
when did he do the census of torn bras and torn panties?
Opinion, bro.
So whatever research was done,
Sampling.
was it bed by bed, bed to bed?
Watu wanaumia bwana.
So I actually just wanted to say
Bottoms
that,
up.
that being a really free man Do you control your economy as an individual? And when we talk about you being able to control your economy, we are talking about the democratization of your personal economy, including what he's saying, by the way, that are you able to choose today what I will wear? When I woke up today, I just decided I will not do a tie and a shirt. I decided I'm just going to do something that feels like it's a Friday. But are we in a position to choose? Sometimes we put on this cloth because primarily that is what we have.
That's what you can see.
Are we able to choose food that we will eat?
No.
So we can't choose. And why are we taking time talking about taxation? Actually, at this level that we've taken, like for the last about 1 hour, we've spoken about taxation. It is for the simple reason that the concept of us being Kenyans in the first place is actually premised on taxation. That is the contribution you put in here. The government sells your numbers to get money and out of it. The government gets money out of you being around here in the first place. That you are an asset, and I actually dare say a capital asset. Not just a human resource asset. You are a capital asset that just by the virtue of you being around here, being a Kenyan in the first place, ensures that some people around there, the concern, and it's a going concern, that is Kenya gets money out of you, and that we are going into elections. So as we get into elections, all other factors, including tribe, where you come from, and any other thing that we have always used to determine our politics, honestly does not really matter. And politics is not a joke. Politics should not be taken for the things. Guys really just want us to talk about us versus them. And the us versus them I'm talking about. As a country, we are a very divided country as a society. At national level, people will introduce and sow into our heads tribalism, sometimes issues to do with the religion. At county level, you will go to a county where people speak the same language. Let's use, for example, in Murang'a. They are predominantly Christians. They speak the same language of the same ethnic extraction, but you will still realize that they are different. There are differences. So people have always used this to ensure that when it comes to us going to the poll, we do not go to the polls with our minds open. We are not free men when we go to the poll because already our hands have been tied with the codes of tribalism. Our hands have been tied with the codes of pettiness. So we are just going in to vote people because they have really socialized into thinking that our problems are elsewhere. Now it's time for us to actually talk about issues. Look at Article 43. Can you access education? Can you have food? Do you have clean water? As in all of that, as you go down, the whole of that end, as in for your old man, for those of you who are retiring, are you sure that you're going to retire in peace? The young people who are asking for jobs, the jobs are on the ballot, but somebody does not want you to talk about that. Before you go away, I just want to say this so that, for years I've written articles, done a lot of commentary, especially on youth issues. Let's talk about 2017. Jubilee promised 1.3 million jobs. No one is talking about that.
And you did the policy. How did you do it?
No one is talking about that. No one is talking about that. That immediately, they give us other ideas that are abstract. Now we are having ideas that are quantifiable. That as I go to the ballot, I will ask the question, how will this affect my household?
Will you ask Ruto, Uhuru, or Raila? Or Raila, Uhuru, or Ruto?
I want to answer your question in a very broad way, a roundabout way, Prof. When I became an adult and voted for the first time in 2007, I voted for ODM. Of course, my side of government lost, or rather my side of the ballot lost. At least, halfway. We won halfway. Everybody in that particular election won. As in, it was honors even. At the end of the day, we had a government of national unity. In 2013, I voted for Raila.
Again?
Yes. And he spectacularly lost.
Very well.
In 2017,
excellently.
I even ran on ODM and lost.
Both of you lost?
Both of us lost. Now, let me tell you something. There's this saying that once is happenstance, twice is coincidence, thrice is enemy action, 3 times, same side, I will totally be a madman to vote the same way I have voted since 2007. When 2007 was my virgin vote. You know, when you're just turning into an adult, and now you are voting. So he asked me, whom will you look at? For me, I really want to look at the future from where we are going. As in, from where I sit, I like to look at the future, because people are not going to guilt trip us with the past. Then we fought for the second liberation. The second liberation was not a precept of a few people, but there are people who paid the ultimate price. We even don't talk about them. Their graves have been forgotten. They died. They paid the ultimate price. So the survivors of that particular struggle should therefore not own that struggle and privatize it. So can we look at Kenya from where we are now? We already have got independence. Haven't we forgotten the Mau Mau? We speak about them. We teach. But just imagine every time we want to do anything, you want to have food, and they say, like, before you have your meal, please remember the Mau Mau. It is okay. We thank the Mau Mau and the people who came ahead of us. By the way, they were young people who stood guard. We also want to thank the people who stood in for the second liberation.
Yeah.
But it is time for the third and final liberation. It is socioeconomic empowerment as articulated in Article 43. That we will not do with the same thinking that fought the second liberation. That we will not do with the same thinking that did what I call the first liberation, that is getting off the white man. Going forward, we have got a very different generation. We've got millennials. As now the biggest voting bloc. They are no longer young because they have got the younger ones who are called Generation Zers, people born after 1996. And even the Generation Zers, even as they start getting assertive, and a number of them being able to vote now, we also have got the new kids in the block. We call them the Alpha generation, guys born after 2013. Entirely very young, and they think very differently. So the demographics have changed. Our problems could look like they are the same, but they are not entirely the same. Things have changed. The dynamics have changed. Okay. Therefore, where do you look at? I know people want us to talk about, Prof, you are an academic. You can throw big words around, right? If it were just winning, if that is where we want to go, the words that were used in the second liberation, when they simply meant that we wanted fair government, we will not proceed that way. That's why, for me, the only reason why I think Ruto makes a lot of sense, and the hustler narrative makes a lot of sense, is that only 9% of all the people who begin school get into tertiary education. So where are all these other people going? There are these people who are running the economy, the informal sector that is actually running this economy. So we have to talk about these people. And how do we talk about them? We must give them support. We must change the way we do things, grow our cottage industry. When I was growing up, when I was still young, we used to talk about Juakali. Our Juakali has refused to grow and become mainstream. Okay. Do you know why? Because our policies and the way we approach, we want Juakali to remain Juakali. Okay. Before we start asking these people for more money,
that's what Juakali.
And you know, the inspiration is here. It's so simple that people can come from down and sit with kings. The Juakali people who have been making things in Kamukunji for years can also start owning factories. There's the same way the people who, for example, are selling chicken now own chicken farms. Okay. It is this conversation we are having, and people want it to get it twisted. But I think for the first time, even those of us who work within technical spaces should refuse to go with the cliche and face things the way they are. Okay.
Prof, let's move this conversation further. And I want us to roll it to the rulings that happened yesterday in court. And it keeps, everyone is wondering, are all thieves equal? Or some thieves are more equal than others? We saw the ruling, for instance, on the Olympics. Soy has been slapped with 105.6 million fine or 16 years in prison. Hassan Wario, 3.6 million, was a CS of sports at that time. What do you make of the rulings that have been done by the courts on corruption?
I think I was really surprised by that ruling. I don't want to dispute what probably the magistrate considered, but it's so strange that the person who is in charge of the ministry, which lost money, who also traveled to Brazil, can be given such a lenient sentence of about 3.5 million or 6 years in prison. And then the same person seems to have anticipated that is the fine. He pays immediately. Hassan Wario paid the money from the reports.
Almost immediately.
So the temptation to think this is planned is high. The celebrations that took place, the government of Kenya, this money that was lost and misappropriated about the Rio Olympic, it's a lot of money. What is 3 million? In fact, we are not paying that money. It's not. We are not recovering the money. I think we have a moral obligation to make out a thief of 20 shillings is also is just a thief, and a thief of 500,000 is also a thief. So the moral message you send there is you need to punish the crime, and punishment should fit crime. Soy is a very junior person. He didn't have even big responsibility in the ministry. He's even in the pegging order. He's not a permanent secretary. He's not the finance officer in the ministry. Huyu ni mtu mdogo. I don't even know whether Mahakama was practicing punishment using bottom up.
Maybe they're taking your advice. Maybe they're taking your advice very seriously.
They are now doing bottom up by hitting soil. So I am unable. There is always this responsibility situation that the person who is culpable, when you are a minister, being a cabinet secretary is not a joke. You are the custodian. You are the one who was delegated with that responsibility to look after that ministry. The delegated power of the president was again donated to you under Article 1. And now you end up taking lesser punishment. Ni kupunish watoto na baba anaenda scot free. You get a father. Let me ask you, do you where you are, I don't know, in the Rift Valley, do you grow tea or maize?
Maize.
If you grow maize, then you find Arnold with his son in your maize plantation. They wanaiba maharagwe. Ulipanda huko maharagwe. Wanaiba maharagwe. Then you say, okay, mtoto huyu, mtoto ndiyo tutapanish. Unanyonga mtoto. Halafu namwambia baba yake, wewe waja tukutoe tu hizi nguo na uende. Does it make sense? It doesn't make sense. So in terms of consideration about the spirit of the Constitution, I could see the magistrate struggling to justify one or two things we have taken into consideration. She took too long to tell people about the ruling, but she tried to explain her situation, how she considered, we realized so and so didn't benefit directly. If you say so and so didn't get money, if I get money from the ministry and I use some decoy, I can still access.
But you send me a check.
You take, then you'll give me in a hotel. How will people know that? So the guy who has the responsibility was the Hassan Wario, and that is the punishment that was given by the courts. I don't know the considerations that were done, but it's like when we recently had a match when Chelsea was given a red card.
I don't watch football, unfortunately.
Yes, you don't. But the people we are talking about, you give a red card to a player and then send him off, but also give a penalty. So it's very tough. They lose a player, they also lose. You give a penalty, so it's double punishment. So when I look at this, it would have been more reasonable for the minister to take responsibility, and then so he gets less. But you can see now the poor Soy, a very junior person. In fact, in terms of the ministerial setup, he was a Lilliputian. And yet, he was is taking the
Yes,
lion's
the
share.
crucified.
Is taking the lion's share. So this is very tough, and it is not. It's common in this country. It happens like that. This is not just an isolated case. We have seen small people.
Small fish.
Small fish being punished harder than the big fish, and you see people walk out with very 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 light punishment, and that's the thing, and that's a conversation we need to do, and I think the public out there has a responsibility to start debating this kind of ruling. If the criminal procedure rules allow that. And they say, you can bet out that kind of punishment under the circumstances to the principal respondent, the accused, then maybe it needs revision.
Okay.
But I don't think that was a very popular ruling in the eyes of the public.
Okay. To you, Arnold, as well. And when you look at it, the excuse that have been given is that they are saying Soy was one who was supposed to be accounting. But at the Ministry of Finance, the opposite is true. It is the CS now who is hanging on the hookahs, and the accounting officer is a state witness.
Rotich.
Yeah. And this accounting officer Tuge is a witness against him. He's a state witness.
An old American said that we have seen our enemy and he is us. I think the more they rule, if we are going to be looking at these issues, especially stuff done around government, the official corridors of government, and interpreting them the right way, we probably are going to liberate ourselves sooner than we thought. We are not really free men as yet.
Okay.
And when you speak about free men, I'm not talking about us actually having to put on rastas and go into the bush or do revolts. No. I'm talking about small milestones that are left. Because if we do not have democratic room on how we live our lives to the full, we are still not free men. Now, Article 27 of the Constitution is quite, I don't know how to put it, but then it comes out like all of us are equal before law, and we have got the freedom from discrimination. But isn't that what works away, not just in the courtrooms? It works everywhere. What Professor has not told you is that a man who steals chicken easily gets 5 years than the man who has robbed a ministry, for example. Isn't that so common? Isn't it a narrative that we know so well? No. It's been socialized in a way that we can't even, we don't even look at it like an injustice. Yeah. There are so many people in remand for very, very small things. They stole chicken to eat. They stole maize to eat. Chakula. But we have got people moving around here who stole huge money, and then it keeps on going. Of course, Soy was the mission, the chief of the whole thing. So in that particular one, then we allocate the burden of responsibility, the weight, to the person who, quote unquote, in law, should be the person who was in charge of everything else. But then when it comes to something else, like I really love talking about Aurora and Kimwarer, because deep down in my heart, I have got a feeling, and I have said it on this show before, that the Aurora and Kimwarer thing could actually just knock elsewhere. Sometimes I feel like Aurora and Kimwarer was the money Jubilee used for campaign. And that it's just used for politics. Because I'm trying to see who would buy 50 vehicles. From my days in politics, having worked within strategy, especially at diagnostics level, and then when you're doing logistics, 50 vehicles could simply be the kind of mobility assets you need to go across the country. That aside, when I look at that, we are getting the PS. This is the person who, according to law, is the authority to incur expenditure. He's the AIE holder here. He's the final AIE in a ministry. But then we remove the PS in the picture and quote unquote bring in, say that then he or she is now a state witness. Now we are prosecuting somebody else. You see the controversy around that. It's not even controversy. It's madness. It's the same thing. I'm actually thinking that probably it is time we also looked at the DPP's office. For the simple reason that I think the DPP has given himself powers that do not exist in law. He has encroached on the space of the police, and he's also encroached on the spaces of judiciary. When I think that DPP is a distinct office, it's very different from the police. It's also very different from the judiciary. Why do I say that? That there are cases where the DPP has decided that this one cannot proceed to. Of course, the law allows.
Arnold,
Yeah.
let me tell you something.
Yeah.
In this case, if our systems were working,
Yeah.
If
the ESCC, the DPP you are talking about,
Yeah.
the Attorney General would appeal that ruling. But I suspect this is the game which is being played. Because it is already planned.
It's a laundry.
First, you have acquitted Wario,
Yeah.
who was supposed to be the main guy. You have removed the PS from the center of the whole conversation. Then you convict this guy, poor guy Soy. You want over 105 million, which you know he can't raise.
Like we have always
Then
done.
he can appeal. You can see they were ready to appeal. One guy is walking out celebrating, another one is saying they are appealing. I suspect now, after the appeal, the courts, probably the High Court, will find that this sentence was not correct. And it overlooked certain things.
And Wario will get back his money.
And then the guy would be, so he will also be acquitted. You get the point?
Yeah.
Then Wario is also acquitted. The end
gets
is
his mullah back.
zero. The money will not be recovered. Yes, the money will not be recovered. This guy, with that sentence that was meted against Soy is not meant to be implemented.
Okay.
Because it's not human. What they have done is wrong. And so it will end up in another mahakama. And the other mahakama will say, this one
Was not looked at very well.
It was not looked at. Then they'll say, okay, we shall do fresh investigation. But already, the other guy, Wario, has already paid sentence. Has already paid. So you have to open a new file.
You can't actually like take him back.
You can't take him back. So in the end, the 105 will not be paid.
and this
The
other
guy will not go to prison, finally. And then hiyo kesi itafungwa. Hata kama watu waliiba 400 million
itazama hivi.
Itazama. Sasa hakuna kitu.
But you can also
Imeisha.
There is another side to this story that we have not looked at. This story
Inazama hiyo.
This story also has got an angle that we also need to discuss.
Yes.
And no one is talking about it.
Yes.
That Wahiga Mwaura, the journalist at Citizen, rejected the money he had been given.
Yes.
1 million.
And said his employer had already
Taken care of that.
And it was not in his conscience to take that money. Now, there is a very interesting bit here. That only Wahiga Mwaura brought up that issue. And of course, when they came in, then they realized it was true. It's brought us to this far, right? The funniest thing is that there are other journalists. I know, Bitok, you and I have got our background in journalism initially. That's where we started to make our living. But there were other journalists also on the same entourage. They received this money. They didn't complain.
Yeah.
And no one is talking about them.
Yeah.
You see what one citizen can actually do. Just one of us can do. It's also time we spoke about these other people whose media houses paid for them, and they took that money and they did not complain.
Wakisikia ukiongea hivyo wanasema sasa huyu jamaa anataka kuchoma.
It is important we also start asking that question. Where are these other journalists? Can we also know who they were?
Yes.
These other joyriders, let's not even talk about the journalists who actually were accredited to go and cover it. There were other joyriders in that particular group that went to Rio. Yeah. Can we start talking about these other individuals who benefited illegally and did not say until one man raised his issue? Just one man. Who are these other people? What are they saying, and how do they feel when these rulings are actually going on?
And also the side chicks.
Well, the side chicks, even the journalists, for example, who are there.
We must drop all of them.
The same people are on social media guilt-tripping us and moralizing us about accountability and other issues. It's time they also spoke up. We want to know what their story and role was in this. Because so far we've only seen one man coming out who said, no, I wouldn't receive this. The others received the money and they kept quiet. We've come this particular, we've come this far on that particular issue. So also, can you also ask about these other guys? You shouldn't be out there telling us about accountability, quote unquote, being woke and calling out people.
And they've been eating.
You went to Rio, chewed government money.
And then you come back an evangelist.
And you are here preaching. People must actually... So, people out there, we also need to actually ask, where are these people?
Tunasonga, Prof. William Ruto jana amesema niko tayari, nimesafisha mikono, niko tayari kuingia mto wa Siloam. Tuoshe mara 7 na turudi tukua mandugu na Uhuru Rais. Is it that the deputy president is getting back, or it has been a play all along?
No, I don't.
Has it been a cinema?
Hakuna cinema hapo. People, why do the statements coming from Ruto attract so much attention like this?
Hey.
There are people who have made a career distorting William Ruto's things. Are you one of them?
I have not distorted anything. I just asked.
Unauliza maswali ambayo watu wengine wanauliza. Umeona Nation headline leo ya gazeti?
Ameuliza nini?
Anasema me too.
Ati me too. What me too?
Yani wanasema
he also wants a handshake.
He wants a handshake. That is nonsense. Journalistic nonsense. Okay. Let me tell you. Because William Ruto is not asking, first of all, he's not asking for a handshake. It is the church bishops, the bishops who suggested there should be some truce between the president and the deputy president. So he responded to the church that if that is the approach they are taking,
then I'm ready.
He cannot refuse. But now the way the Nation is putting it is like William Ruto is competing at the door
for
handshake. William Ruto is the one who formed this government with the president. He's part of this government. So when you tell him he wants a handshake, what is this? But he went ahead to explain. So it was a response to the church people, because the church talked on their own in a different forum. So he's responding. Being a religious person he didn't. I don't think he thought he should not ignore the church. So he has said, if there is any sentiment that wants to bring us together with the president, it is okay. But now he's doing it because he thinks that if there are any misunderstandings, then they can be sorted out. But if you look at the president, recently the president also was asked by a media house, I think Citizen, with Francis Kashuri asking, what is your problem with the DP?
Yes.
And the president said he doesn't understand, he doesn't know. So even the president probably doesn't think there is a big issue.
And also when the DP was asked, he said, ask the president.
You know what? But yesterday the DP explained something that we all have been thinking about. The DP thinks that the coming in of Raila Odinga in government soon after it was formed by William Ruto and by the president William Ruto completely torpedoed the Jubilee agenda, and you could almost see from his representation that is the reason why maybe he parted ways with not parted ways, but he disagreed with the president. And he emphasized, and I think William Ruto should be commended for that. He emphasized that Uhuru is his boss, which is a fact. Kenya has only one president, and our president is Uhuru Kenyatta. So when the DP with humility acknowledge that is his boss, and if there is any misunderstanding and people want to clear those misunderstandings, he's ready for that. I would have been surprised if he was not ready for any talks about reconciliation. People reconcile, but people are looking at that from a very naive level. The big issue is that what is it that really made the president and the deputy president disagree? These issues are the ones which would form the basis of arbitration, if any. The question of having a stranger who was your opponent yesterday and today enters government without legitimacy. So the people of Kenya have this confusion. You saw my brother saying, we have tried these things 3 times, and he's asking a question about how, he asked a very fundamental question, and his question was, there were certain number of jobs that were promised by Jubilee, and they have not been achieved. So I was asking him now, do you ask Raila Odinga, William Ruto, Uhuru, or Uhuru and alone? That question becomes pertinent because immediately William Ruto formed government with his president, certain things happened and somebody came into government. And that person almost started playing the role of William Ruto. So then it means that it is difficult for you to know who to ask to be accountable. I think probably the president alone, because the other guy has no legitimacy. Even if Raila were to make mistakes in this government, you don't blame him. He has no legitimacy, but he was invited. If he was not invited, he would not be there. So blaming Raila Odinga is not a good thing in this. And I think you see, he should never have been part of this government, but he probably should struggle now in 2022 and form government. So my final take on this point is this: having some kind of agreement between the president and the deputy president is good for the country, but they don't have to agree.
Okay,
you know what? In a democracy like ours, if these two gentlemen have honestly disagreed on the way the country can be run, first we tell William Ruto, your legitimacy, you are still a member of Jubilee until we move to the next general election.
Okay.
So if you have different opinions about how this country can be run, continue selling those opinions, the agenda, the blueprints, and ask the people of Kenya
to support
you for 2022. For President Kenyatta, we tell him, since everything stops at your your doorstep, also make sure that the country is secure enough until you finish your term.
Okay.
But in 2022, our people are going to peacefully change government, put in place people they think can secure their destiny. And if that person is going to be William Ruto, it will be okay. If it will be Raila Odinga that they want to choose, it's okay. If it's Musalia Mudavadi, it's okay. William Ruto has his own agenda. Uhuru Kenyatta doesn't seem to agree with what William Ruto is saying. So the determination of who is right and who is wrong
is with the people.
Is with the people, and it's going to be done in August next year.
2022.
Yes.
Hi, Arnold Maliba, the deputy president is ready to make peace, and the question is, mambo ni movie ya Oga. Nimeona ODM pia wameamuka. ODM are now happy names.
What?
ODM, they are saying, why is this guy coming back? Arnold.
Well, there is a question that we must answer. That is cui bono. As in, who benefits out of the handshake between the president and the deputy president at the moment? Does William Ruto really need a handshake with the president at the moment?
I doubt.
So sometimes I know the media runs out with stories and they say he's also lining up and he's willing. But what people are forgetting is that William is just being magnanimous in victory. The president initiated a war of attrition on his deputy. And it's been on for the last about 4 years. The deputy president could not fight an offensive war. All through he fought a defensive war. And at the end of the day, the siege that was laid on his doorstep has actually collapsed. Now the people who brought war and offered battle up to his homestead are now demanding that he should initiate a truce and should reach out. So when the deputy president says that he's willing, it's not like kind of he's really anxious, he's really like looking forward to it. Because of what benefit is it? Truth is that at the moment,
is it being diplomatic
between the president and the deputy president will hurt the deputy president for no apparent reason. Because for the last 4 years, we have seen the mismanagement and the misruling that has gone in between null and void. I think that is the two brothers.
Their brother is called null and void.
Yeah, null and his brother void. We have seen the mismanagement, how we've gotten at this particular level. So just when things are about to fall apart, now they are bringing in William. just for purposes of probably saving face. And there's another bit of it. What the president promised Raila has not been fulfilled. BBI has been a stillborn, stillbirth. It's dying. And since this relationship had nothing other than BBI and to help Raila sneak into power, and that because that mission has failed, Raila is actually on his way out of his handshake. So the president, now having been used to handshake and moving around with a brother, now is looking for another brother. I even do not think that it's the bishops who are pushing this. It is the president's friends reaching out to bishops to try and reach out so that then he saves face. Because who started this particular war? It wasn't William. And but I have said this elsewhere, and sometimes people think like it's madness, but this is the truth. The president does not love original stuff. He loves counterfeit and he loves fake things. Initially, we thought it was the Jubilee administration's liking for coming up with layers and layers of things even where they exist. Like, for example, when they formed the government, we already had a youth fund, women enterprise fund, and everything else. They insisted on coming up with Uwezo, which was a copy-paste of existing. And we know too well that governments should not be in the business of competing with each other. A government should not compete against itself. This guy, we have got devolution. He came up with the NMS. He had his own government. He came up with a handshake. So he's busy. So along the way, the president has always, even where we had a vision delivery secretariat, he came up with another analog of the same and called it PDU. So over time, the president always loves layers. He's a man who loves cheating. And the handshake.
Cheating, where exactly?
When I talk about cheating, I'm talking about cheating, not lying, cheating the other side. But then
wakazi
hiyo side ingine. I am told that when you start some affair, you know that this affair will end. The handshake was that affair.
Nyumba ndogo.
Ilikuwa nyumba ndogo, and all of you know that this will end. So the handshake between Raila and the president is coming to an end. So to save face and to go back to his old home is like a man who moved out of his matrimonial home. Now he's going out there, and now they are saying they want to blame Shetani. William he did not fight the president. He didn't even oppose BBI. He just asked questions. He said some few issues need to be considered, and he said that let it be a participatory process. But that alone, things that are rather obvious, really made these people angry. So,
but you see,
yeah,
which I agree with you on the fact that William Ruto has said he's ready for the negotiation.
It's out of magnanimity.
Yeah,
it's actually diplomatic.
And what he's saying, that is a political masterstroke, because that is exactly the reply that William Ruto should do. If he is going to be the president of Kenya, any attempts to bring him together with people he has disagreed with is called for. I thought that William Ruto there was acting really presidential, and whichever way he did it.
William, Prof,
yes,
just a small interruption.
Yes.
William does not act presidential.
He is.
William has always been presidential.
Yes.
Even in 2013, lest we forget, people were asked, it was a common question between William and Uhuru, who is more presidential? And people always said William was more presidential than his brother now, who's now on the other side.
Yeah, now, let me finish this point. Yeah. I think, Gerard, what Arnold has said reminds me of something else. You know, when you see church leaders like these ones, some of them have been muted about the mess that Raila has brought into the Jubilee government, and now starting to talk. They want a reconciliation with William. I think it is even the guilt on the side of some church leaders, mainstream church leaders, wanting to retrace their steps. And the reason why this thing is happening is that, Gerard, you might disagree with me, but I have spent all my time adult life in school, so I'm guided by data and science.
Okay.
The data and the science we have in this country says that William Ruto would be president if we vote now.
Okay.
Let me tell you this. It's bad news. The pretense people are making does not respect science. If you don't respect science, you become a witch. You cannot run things My brother here goes to Somalia. His work with the youth there is based on science.
Yeah.
Science is very brutal. So the political science that you get around here and you start checking the presidential candidates that we have, starting with William Ruto. Sadly for some people, William Ruto is ahead of the pack in terms of presidential candidates. So what do you do? A lot of people in this country have started panicking. And now we have hurt this man so much. So where will we be? We don't want to be the wrong side of history. Let's initiate something that makes us relevant, and then so that we can be on the right side of this man. But so in that case, you can look at the regions and do the science and check. These things that you are hearing in central Kenya, where his opponent Raila Odinga goes there with a few people, and then they start saying that he's now controlling central Kenya. They have nothing. They are talking from the top, but they don't know the bottom. The bottom is with William Ruto. You go to this Rift Valley, the bottom is with William Ruto. You go to central Western Kenya, the bottom is with William Ruto. Forget about people like you, maybe Gerard, wewe ni mtu wa juu kidogo, unatuita sisi kunywa chai kwa hoteli.
Upcoming dynasty.
Wewe unaita watu, lakini huko chini kwako, hata huko mahali unatoka, the bottom is with William Ruto. You go to northeastern Kenya, the bottom is with William Ruto. So up to the time we are talking, William Ruto does not have a credible opponent that can threaten his rise to the presidency. So that panic also informs this talking that, look, the church leaders want reconciliation. But also, it also informs the headlines you are using in mainstream media, you are seeing in mainstream media, to look at, like William Ruto is throwing in the towel. He now wants reconciliation and wants approval from his boss. I don't think William Ruto is looking for approval from his boss. Part of the reason why we elected President Uhuru Kenyatta, we didn't elect him to endorse William Ruto. That is not his job.
You elected him to work.
We elected him to work. But the problem is, Raila Odinga, Musalia Mudavadi, all these guys that I see, Kalonzo Musyoka, are fighting to be endorsed by Uhuru Kenyatta. So this sort of endorsement, they think that they can rope in William Ruto in that endorsement cycle so that he can also start asking, I want to be endorsed. But you know, when you have been around here to see our politics for a very long time, you know, I have been asking this question, Gerard.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to give it a big thought. This big question. I saw my brother Musalia Mudavadi go to Kiamba and say he's my Muranga. I think it was Nyandarua. Muranga, I think. He said, I'm Macharia and I would like to continue. Mahali Uhuru amewachia. Now, if you are going to an election in 2022 and you want continuity, continuity would also mean that we continue with these bad fuel prices. How will people vote for you if you are going for continuity? This is bad political calculation from Musalia. You cannot win an election by wanting to support the outgoing president and say, I want to continue, when people have been there and he has made mistakes.
What a
I call it the endorsement syndrome.
Yeah, so there is Raila Odinga who thinks nothing has gone wrong with the Uhuru administration he has been part of. So again, he promises continuity. Kalonzo Musyoka promises continuity. Now, this continuity, do you think the majority of voters in Kenya are going to vote for continuity? The reason why Uhuru Kenyatta was not elected in 2022 is because he was going to continue with the Moi project. And we called it a project. So anybody who wants to win election by becoming Project Uhuru is not likely to win the election. So that is why Ruto is ahead of the pack, because his political calculations is slightly more advanced and his opponents are dazed. He has taken them into a trance. So they need to recover from this trance, like in a boxing match where they have been boxed to the ground, and when they wake up, they don't know where to throw the punch, and they start talking and coordinated things. This is the point that you are seeing within the opposition, and the church is looking at it, and it doesn't see stability in the Uhuru, Ruto, Uhuru, Musalia, Kalonzo axis. In that setup, they don't see stability. They are trying to appeal to the emotional side of William Ruto and see whether that if he refuses, they also get if he accepts and Uhuru refuses, they get an excuse to say, now we are throwing our support behind William Ruto, so that they can find some favors. But the thing is caused by the panic you are seeing, because William Ruto is ahead of the pack in terms of the presidential candidates. Unless something funny happens, he's going to be the president of the Republic of Kenya in August.
Okay.
I think as Prof speaks about data, that then brings me to an issue that we have always not wanted to talk about. When you are doing policy or whatever political decision you're going to make, you are doing data. From data you build the indicators, and from the indicators you are going to build a program. Of course, that is to simplify the whole process. How you say that Raila finds everything he has done with Uhuru right, but everything else done by any other person is wrong, brings me to the biggest problem of this country. I'm looking at Pompey arguing that he is wrong, and wherever he steps, that is wrong. And then in his struggle against Augustus Caesar, who, as he crosses the Rubicon and is coming on the other side, using that phrase we have always used, the die is cast. One thing disturbs me about Raila, and I'm using that example because sometimes Raila comes off with that Pompey notion that he is the right thing, so he is right. When I talk about he is right, I'm not using it as a verb. I'm using right here as a noun specifically, that Raila himself is right. When he says that something is right, it becomes right. So Uhuru is bad and wrong when Raila says. Uhuru is okay when Raila says. And as a nation, we cannot actually be held to captivity to that particular level. Why do I say that? I have seen arguments about reformist credentials. That for me looks so much of a turncoat. Like Jubilee was so bad until the other day. For those of us who supported Raila in the days of old, repeatedly, in my adult
until
life,
March 2018.
Jubilee was wrong. Uhuru was a novice who could not do anything.
Computer.
It was computer. There was the 54% and everything else around that. Then all of a sudden, my brother Uhuru, you cannot take a nation. And we're talking about the most educated population of this country since God created it, because we are fairly better than those who came ahead of us as a nation. You cannot treat us that way as much. And that is why, for me, I bring to question the reform credentials of Raila. I know guys have thrown out and said Ruto has no reform credentials. But I will actually argue out and ask you, for those of us who have served in places where there are conflict and battlefields, I will tell you that people go to war for one reason. All battles are solved in the boardroom. We go to war so that we can win peace. And war is just a continuation of politics by other means. But at the end of the day, we want to go to normalcy. It is an end to a specific, it is actually a means to a specific end. So let's talk about reform. Reform cannot just be, you are not just a reformist when you are in the battlefield. The streets are no longer viable from where we are.
Yes.
So where are these credentials? And it's also possible. Alpha Conde the other day is a long-serving politician, oppositionist, who immediately got into power. He became worse than those people he was fighting against. He went back on the ideals he had campaigned for. So let's talk about William Ruto, for example. If we were to look at reform for what it really means. He campaigned against the Bomas draft, right? Where Raila was also, as he contributed to the second liberation. Isn't that a contribution? Isn't that reform? Or William just made sense at that particular time when he was with Raila opposing the Amos Wakoled Bomas constitution. That cannot count.
The Cliffy draft.
Yes. Then we move on to another thing. In 2007, as the whole nation fought against electoral injustice, William Ruto was a leading soldier for Raila at that particular time, a soldier for social justice, a soldier for electoral justice. That does not count.
It doesn't matter to Raila.
It doesn't matter. So it is Raila who says that these are credentials and these do not matter. And, that revisionist approach to things is not the actually right way. Then, like I said, if you're going to be a reformist, it is beyond the battlefield. Because you could be like Alpha Conde, where you win power, and immediately you win power, you go back to doing the things
that you fought against.
By the way, before we forget, Alpha Conde had his own BBI, and he pushed it through. Immediately, he pushed it through.
What was the name of his BBI?
It's true. Alpha Conde
What was the
had
name
his
of
own
his
BBI.
BBI?
He even extended his rule. He changed the constitution. And immediately, by the way, on the day he signed his own BBI, he also brought in some stimulus package. The same way we had tied goodies around the BBI. But see what he actually has earned him. So for everyone who actually tries to do a BBI, he has got an Alpha Conde fate waiting for him. Our military, because we are a civilian country, might not come for you, but then the people will come for you. So I say that reform credentials must go beyond the battlefield. Because sometimes we go to the battlefield, and the people who fight a lot in the battlefield, normally in the battlefield you're fighting for your own survival before you think about the flag under which you're fighting. So how has Raila's credentials in government actually distinguished him as a reformist? Look at William Ruto's credentials as an MP for Eldoret North. For any other thing, if we forget any other thing, let us just look at his CDF. It was always top 5. And when we talk about reform, we are talking about economic reform. How we even run government. It should be, that reform goes beyond just fighting in the streets. That reform goes beyond just going to jail, because you can go to jail and still come to power and do an Alpha Conde on us. So when William Ruto was running his CDF, can that speak of as a reform that we all were looking for?
But you must...
Then the other thing, Prof, just before I forget.
Yes.
When he became the CS for education, all these things you're looking around here, the private universities you see around here, the reform that came, he's an academic and he will actually, a lot of those policies that were done then were done, and some of them started under his watch. He became the Minister for Agriculture. We all know the reform that was there. So you cannot just be a reformist in the streets. You must also be a reformist in government, and when we give you chance, so that when we bring you to the boardroom, there's a reason why all movements have got some political attaches and people who then translate their ideals into programs. So is William Ruto a reformist? Yes, he is.
And just on that, he's a reformist, but I think what scares a lot of people around William Ruto is his sharpness of mind. You know, a lot of people in this country...
Translating ideology into a program.
A lot of people in this country, Arnold, they don't like guys who are sharp. If you have a good brain...
They want choirs.
People in Kenya celebrate mediocrity. They want people who can't wake up early. You know, this guy called me to come to this show, Gerard, very early. William Ruto wakes up very early. And they have a problem with that. Because when you wake up very early, you start seeing who is snoring. Sasa wanakuuliza nini? William Ruto's sharpness. In fact, Kenya is lucky to have him around as one of the politicians. How I wish we had another sharp politician like William Ruto who can take him on for these ideas that he's talking about bottom up without insults and innuendo. If we had that kind of thing, we would have Gerard a very good setup from which to choose who our next president is. You know, where we are, I'm a bit disappointed that the battle is skewed in favor of William Ruto because he doesn't have a proper competitor. I would like to have somebody as sharp as him opposing William Ruto and telling William Ruto off, so that we can take the conversation of our country to another level. But what you hear from his opponents is just dismissive, abuse, insult.
Because they want to run on sentiment.
They want to run on sentiments. You know, I come from Western Kenya. Let me tell you that, if you didn't know. Gerard, I come from Western Kenya. But don't tell me to vote for a person from Western Kenya as old as I am. Just because he comes from my region. I'm looking for a guy who can change Kenya. I don't want a guy to come and tell me, because you are a lawyer, You know, Daniel Arap Moi was more lawyer than myself. Daniel Arap Moi, I wonder whether he was challenging. There was a time he chose his cabinet, Minister for Finance, Attorney General. We had very many ministers there. Now, if you say that is what equality means, we got nothing out of those ministers. The workers of this world, the Masaharias of this world, the Mkoa Nangwes of this world, many people there.
We still actually have got Class C roads in
Yeah,
Western
we
that
have
are not
Class C
tarmac.
roads. They did nothing. So if you tell me now, you have to vote for you because you are a lawyer. I have to vote for you because you are a Kikuyu. You know, this story has been there. Arnold has talked about 57 years. This is our story. That if you vote in your own tribe, you benefit.
Your life will become better.
Daniel Arap Moi, I went to places in Baringo. He was the president of Kenya for 24 years. If you have gone to Baringo, there are some places which are not accessible. Now, why did he not do it? Is it that all Kalenjins benefited under him?
No.
So, this story...
But is Bitoka Kalenjin in the first place?
This is some fellow from Sudan, I think. you know,
Did you benefit?
No,
I don't benefited, bro. I'm suffering.
I don't think he has a proper identity. But the point we are making is this. This is the talk man.
I wanted to know if he benefited.
So
I can categorically state without fear or favor that I did not benefit.
If you didn't benefit...
The only thing I benefited from was milk, and we all drank.
Now, I
also
have presidential candidates from Western. But I don't think they have told me...
No, I don't think you have got a presidential candidate from Western. What you have are aspirants and a few guys who are threatening to run.
Yeah, but maybe...
Because a candidate is quite a qualified term to use.
Very much obliged. So, let's go that way. But there are people who are going to appeal on sentiments. Vote for me because I'm so and so. And we come from this community. Our community is now okay. So it even forces you to start glorifying what you condemned yesterday just because you want to promote ethnic interests. I am not part of that conversation. So my thinking is...
Is the economy ethnic?
No. The economy cannot be ethnic.
The fuel taxation that has been added here.
It can't be ethnic.
How are you paying your tax from an ethnic perspective?
You are not.
Can you cash it from an ethnic lens?
Yesterday there were people who are demonstrating in Migori.
Yeah.
The border porters, and one of them said, "He handshake imetuharibia," because
we have no alternative.
We have no alternative.
Government does not know when to stop.
To stop. So we are calling upon. We need, if between now and the end of the beginning of August next year, we get another sharp politician like William Ruto. I'll be happy with that contest because I want people who can challenge this William Ruto to see what
that's how the country will grow,
that's how this country is going to do. The guy has come up with a blueprint which his opponents are dismissing. I think they are with lethargy. They are lazy. They can't think about it seriously.
They are not dismissing William's ideas.
Yes.
They are afraid
of William's ideas.
That it will cause questions that when you go to the ground, people will ask you, what
is
are you going to do for us?
Yes.
Besides one of us being in power.
Yes.
Kikuyus have got one of their own in power, and I can tell you they're not necessarily happy, especially those who are in business.
I know.
Because it's beyond. Politics is beyond one of us. Representation is so much about interest. And this thing called representation is difficult to quantify for the simple reason that you will actually find an older man taking care of the youth issues much better than a youth sometimes.
Yes.
It's important for the youth to have representation. But you will also find a woman not taking care of women's interests, even though she is. So we must move away from the politics of simplicity. That I'll just have to vote for Kisiangani because he's a Lunje like myself and that is enough. I'll have to vote for you because you are a Kalenjin like myself and that is enough. We must ask beyond identity. Because how do we then grow a nation?
Wacha nikuulize swali.
Yeah.
Hawa say wameabandon mambo ya tribe. Ya tribe or kingpins. You know
they have not, no. They have not. That's what I actually was addressing.
They were in Mombasa, but William Ruto has forced them into a corner now. They are also discussing politics. Economics.
The reason why they are...
When will they go back to the tribal king?
The reason why they are fighting this other narrative is because then it deconstructs what they, as in, you are, Mike Tyson said that everybody has got a plan until they're punched in the face. The hustler narrative was a punch in the face of these so many guys, because their plan has always been, I will show up with my tribe. No, you know, when we used to do in college, you remember where you organize a few goons and then you show up with the admin and you are like, kind of, you know, there's safety in numbers and there's authority in numbers. So you show up and you are like, you know, those people who are outside who want this. These guys have always ensured that we are their goons. The rest of us as a country, you are mobilized. You do not know that just because you are my tribesman, I will show up and make demands on somebody by threatening to unleash you, even though I am not doing it in your name. And that is the politics that has brought us down here. I have to insist that as a country, we are where we are because of the efforts of the people, individual people. The government has not so much served our interests or even helped us. It is time government became a tool for us as individuals to develop our lives and communities.
By the way, Gerard, one of the things we are going to tell William Ruto to do, and that's why I wanted a contest with a really credible candidate. He doesn't have.
He's alone.
So,
and that is a
contest.
So we people who support his thinking are going to be the opposition with him in his camp. We make sure that we take him to task. William Ruto is going to sign a charter. He will sign a charter with us. Well, you know, we can't just give him power
for free.
He must sign a charter on how he's in public. He's going to sign a charter in public on how he will transform Kenya. And that is the point we are making, because we must now be the smart politician to put William Ruto to task, and he has accepted. He's going to sign a charter and say this is how we will change. We want accountability the first 5 years. After he signs a charter, now we invite these newspapers and journalists who are consistently distorting things against William about William Ruto to come and cover that, because he must sign. If he doesn't do the job, we must have something to go home with, and we shall take him to task with it. Hii mambo ya kusema tu kwamba tutabadilisha vijana, tutabadilisha hii mambo ambayo watu wanacheza disco, wengine reggae. You cannot have this kind of thinking and then the people who surround you
just imagine
are so poor. Poverty is not something to be glorified.
Just imagine that something as fundamental as changing a national constitution, the framework of governance, the principles upon which we exist as a republic, was reduced into a song. And you know,
and
it is the same thing we have done. Disagreed. Every time we go to an election, people want to trivialize the whole aspect of how you look at the management of a country to just as simple like us versus them. And immediately elections are done, they close ranks with the other people they were telling you are enemies, and then they work with them in peace and then show up after 5 years.
Sawa, acha tusikie Mungwana anasema jambo.
Go beyond that.
Good morning.
Jambo, how are you bwana Mcho?
Salama sana, how are you?
I'm fine. Hiyo show inashika sana.
Inashika sana?
Leo hiyo show hata sijawahi pata kitu kama hii leo.
Tuma kitu.
Your panelists kina ARNOLD na PROF. I like the fact that they are very conversant with today's politics.
Okay.
Politics inafaa. Sasa there is this issue ameleta about journalists distorting facts. Kuna point tu kidogo ningependa kukukumbusha. Kuna wakati nilisikia some panelist alikuja akasema ya kwamba ile mambo ya dams ati 7 billion, Ruto alisema only 7 billion imepotea. Hiyo kitu imetumiwa sana kupiga William Ruto, na kuna kitu kimoja ningependa niseme. Ruto only said the money in question. He did not say that money has not gotten lost. He said the money in question, hii mambo ya dam ya ARNOLD na Kimware, it is 7 billion. Hiyo ndio in question. That is under investigation. Hiyo ndio ilikuwa. Sasa watu wanachukua hiyo kusema naendelea na show. Nene usitake sana kuleta opponents wa Ruto hapo. Unaleta watu kama hawa.
Hapana, lazima kila mtu akue bwana. Lazima ikuwe balanced.
Hapana, it's not always a balance.
Because, and he's right, on the other side, those people cannot give you a chance.
Yes, watu wanafaa walete watu kama, because one thing you know is this. Ruto is the only one ambaye ame declare interest yake kwa presidency. Na yeye yake iko open. Watu wengine tu wanataka kumbring, anybody else ni kumbring, people just want to bring him down. wanataka kumpiga just because unajua watu pia wataki mtu. People nowadays wako na ile jealousy. Ambapo wakati wanaona mtu, a man should not think ama hawezi taka kuwa ambitious. Kuna watu wanataka kuvunja na kuharibu ambitions za watu. So I think it is very important uangalie mtu. Another thing pia akina Arnold na wameleta kuhusu track record. Track record ya Ruto, it is very very good. I have mimi nilikuwa shule wakati alikuwa higher education minister. Na wakati huo help disbursement ilikuwa mzuri tena sana. Wakati aliingia higher education ndio wakati, I think it was in 2010 hapo 2011.
Okay.
Mambo ya help hakukuwa na mambo mingi. Akiwa agriculture pia mambo ilikuwa mzuri. Most of these things that fertilizer imeenda ikakuwa imekuwa subsidized na serikali. Hizo ni vitu zilianzia na yeye. So ni mtu ambaye hata bitoko ukileta watu ambao wanamsupport, we know by fact watu wenye wanapiga Ruto ni watu ambao wako na kinyongo tu. Na wataki kuona mwanaume akideclare interest yake, anataka dynasty na watu ambao wako na majina kubwa kubwa, hao ndio wanatawala na watatawala mpaka lini. So that is my contribution.
Thank you so much. Who am I speaking to?
You're speaking to Kevin.
Kevin, huh?
Yes.
Okay. Asante sana Kevin, na ukuwa na weekend safi.
Hata mimi niite pia Bitoko.
Kuja. Hii ni show ya wananchi.
Hiyo ni show. Leo jua ni moto kabisa.
Asante gang. Thanks Kevin. Sawa, haya tufunge. Ndaanza na Arnold Maliba. Your tackle of the day, alafu niende kwa prof.
My tackle of the day is we'll actually go back to the discussion that took a lot of time today. We spoke about taxes and the role of common mwananchi into the national development. Governments exist for the simple reason that as human beings we are selfish. We are inherently selfish as human beings. It's ingrained in us. So as human beings we realize that we need to come together in community so that our selfish interests are taken care of. I say that because when you woke up in the morning, you are driven by something you are chasing. Whatever you are chasing then gives you the impetus, whether it's solving other people's problems, you solve it so that you get something. So government, of course, besides law and order, government should be an enabler. Of course, over time, government has grown bigger. It's moved away just from taking care of law and order. It moved into economy by even taking care of the central bank. It's gotten into public service. And lately in the 1900, government then got into development. So government should be an enabling factor. It should be down there at the base that you stand on government, that premised on the things only government can do, because not all of us can work on these things. There are things that you can't, like for example, all of us can't make our own roads. That all of us cannot come up with the fiscal policies for each and every one of us. That will be anarchy, and none of us will actually get it. So, as a people, my tackle is very basic. As a people, there's that old maxim about no taxation without representation and everything else. Government must count in your life because you already contribute to it. So I'll actually put it out this way, that we are 10 months into the next election. Let us not complicate governance. Governance has not been this complex. The ancestors, our ancestors, the people who walked on foot, the people who ensured that we are here, a very resilient lot, had governance that brought us this far. And they didn't have these complex things they were doing out. Can we begin with specifics? This time round, can we deal with specifics? My tackle is basic. Can we do specifics? Because even when you are preparing your meal, you deal with specifics. Do I have gas in the house? Do I have the vegetables? Do I have the flour? Do I have everything? Am I in a position to cook? We do not, only God starts from the bigger perspective. The Bible tells us that he showed up and just said, let there be light, and there was light. Let there be order, and there was order. The rest of us as human beings, the stewards of God, must work. And when you are working, you start from the basics as you get into the complex issues. I will put it out there that for your taxes to be taken care of, somebody must look at you as an individual and your specific situation before they make a decision on that. Can you also think about those individuals before you vote for them, joining a bandwagon and saying, okay, because he belongs to my tribe, because he is different, because look at what, can you be specific about them?
All right.
Be specific about them and demand that they also be specific with you.
All right.
We should get the cloth to fit in somebody before we actually declare whoever fits in that cloth becomes our king.
Okay.
Be specific with your leader
And
and
let
get
them
a
be
leader
specific with
who
you.
actually is about specifics, and that is where the bottom up comes in.
All right. Asante. Prof,
Sasa
kazi kwako.
bado ni ngori.
Ni kunoma.
My tackle is this. Kenya is ripe for the third liberation. We are lucky to be part of this unfolding situation where people are now asking questions that they never used to ask, where the conversation has changed from ethnic chauvinism to economic liberation. So 2 things to fix. Those who want to be part of this liberation must know it is a privilege to serve their country and to be part of this process. The first thing is we must fix the leadership of this country. That is there's a crisis. You have seen Arnold has been talking about governance. We make it very complicated. We want a leadership that is accountable to the people. A leadership that respects the people of this republic. We want a leadership that is consultative. Not a leadership which decides what the people want, but one that asks the people, what do you want? The second thing to fix is the economy. These are the 2 pillars of the liberation I'm talking about, the second liberation. Leadership and secondly, the economy. We must have a different conversation. Our economy is shrinking. It is founded on quicksand. It is likely to collapse. We don't want to watch our country collapse and start blaming the gods. We know we can strengthen this foundation. We can strengthen the pillars. Change the coordinate by empowering the base. How our economy looks like is that you have 10 storage buildings at the top, standing on 2 poles of timber. Only through some kind of holy interference can such a house stand.
Or witchcraft.
So we want to make sure that our country has a strong foundation. And that means empowering the base, expanding the tax bracket, implementing the constitution to support this change in leadership and the economy. Fortunately for us today, we have one guy who seems to understand what we want, William Ruto.
Okay.
I hope many people will join him. But even within the same prism of fixing the leadership and fixing the economy, if there are new ideas on how to do it, like in football 4-3-3, 3-4-3, if there is any new idea which can still lead us to the same liberation, we are looking for other leaders who can come and compete with William Ruto with a different way of doing things to make sure we achieve this goal.
Okay.
Those who want to win the elections must know that the people of Kenya today are cleverer than they were in 1963. This generation of Kina Arnold is now a different generation. They are always on news and they understand when you are cheating them. We have to do our politics differently. We should stop insulting people. We should be tolerant to each other's opinions and work for a greater Kenya. That is our duty and indeed our obligation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming in. It's been a pleasure. Hope to see you again. Wacha kuepa bwana.
Nini?
Wacha bwana.
You just have a slow
Unachoma.
conversation like this.
Unachoma.
Not a lot of pressure. You just
Mimi si happy. Unajua niliwaambia
yeah.
sikuwa na nguo ya kuja. Then he started telling me things which
akuje hivyo. You only need this brain and this face.
Sasa nilipokuja nilimtisha, nilimwambia wakuje wanichukue.
Kashinda kunaendaje?
Nikasema ni noma sana, lakini leo nimekubali kuja, and I'm sure we have had a good conversation about our country. It is not always like this. But I think we need to sanitize our politics, that whatever we say every day, it must add value.
Sure.
In terms of improving the quality of life for our people. Our people deserve better than they have gotten.
Asanteni sana wangwana. Thanks for coming in, and as well tacklers who have been watching on YouTube and on Facebook, and also the guys on Twitter who has been retweeting our videos. We really appreciate your patronage, and I usually tell you that without you the tackle could never be. We are here because of you, and we've grown because you have allowed us to. Until next week on Monday on the Common Sense edition, and to wish you a very great weekend. Take care and ensure that you keep recharging. Recharge. Bye bye.